Welcome to the Hot Mic. This is Atul Singh, the founder, CEO, and editor-in-chief of Fair Observer. With me is Christopher Roper Schell, blonde, but not of the right gender. And he's been drinking tea today from a Princeton cup. I hasten to add, it's my cup. It's a gift to me.
Definitely not mine.
Yes. But we are getting the Texan from Southern Methodist University to become a little more liberal. What's going on with the election, Texan?
Well, I think we've kicked it off. Last week, we had the President's State of the Union address, and his theme was finish the job.
So that means Joe Biden has formally kicked off.
All signs point to go.
Okay.
I would say that's where we are. And to be frank, it's getting long in the tooth for him to bow out. There are a lot of apparatuses, fundraisers, but there's no suggestion that he's walking away from the fight. So he went with finish the job.
I must say he's very youthful. I couldn't do it at his age. I'll be dead by then, Christopher.
He wasn't all that youthful. One of the main problems that Republicans of course cite this, but Democrats don't seem to be overly enthusiastic about having Joe Biden run again. So that's a concern of theirs. But his main theme was finish the job. And in that speech, he mentioned all kinds of programs. I would point out mostly programs that the two principal senators who blocked it last time, Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, wouldn't pass. So I'm not really sure why he thinks that the Republicans are going to help him pass some of this.
He'll twist their arm.
I don't think he's got an arm to twist.
He'll lean over them like Lyndon B. Johnson in that iconic photograph.
Well, he did lean on him during the speech. He made a comment about Republicans supposedly want to cut Social Security and Medicare benefits.
But of course you do. The debt is too high.
Well,
come on, don't lie.
Well, this goes back to a tried and true technique by the Democrats. There was a famous commercial where the Democrats or somebody, a person is shown throwing Granny off a cliff. But this line elicited jeers.
Isn't that a good idea? You'd cut the pension bill.
You would, but Republicans aren't proposing that. We're not proposing that.
No, you're proposing lots of babies, no abortion, and the old die miraculously, younger.
I don't think that's the proposal at all.
It would be very good for the economy, Christopher. Think about the bright side.
I think there are better solutions. But this elicited a lot of jeers, this suggestion that Republicans want to cut the entitlements. And it became more like the House of Parliament.
So what you're saying is Joe Biden has put his stake in the ground as the man who will defend the Social Security created by Lyndon B. Johnson, and he's going to provide welfare to all Americans, and he is the man to lead America for another 4 years.
Well, two things on that.
Yeah.
One, it is not just he. This is actually Donald Trump's line. And two, during Biden's State of the Union speech, he said, and I quote, "If Congress doesn't keep the programs the way they are, they'd go away." Well, one, they're going to go away if we keep them the way they are. But two, Biden also said in 1995, here I'll quote him, "When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I meant veterans benefits. I meant every single solitary thing in the government. And I not only tried it once, I tried it twice, I tried it the third time, and I tried it the fourth." So now we have a very different Biden.
When was this?
That was 1995.
When he was a young reformist senator.
He wasn't even young in 95, my friend. So he'd been around a while even then.
All right. Let's say when he was a younger, more sprightly old man.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. More of a hitch in his step. But now he's saying if Congress doesn't keep these programs the way they are, they'd go away. But here's the point Republicans make. Social Security, which is the pension scheme in the U.S., runs out in 2034. So Congress has to do something by 2034 or benefits will be cut by 25%. Not only that, while the trust fund is running dry, we have to shift the debt somehow. So who buys that? I don't know.
Well, the Chinese are buying it. You don't have a problem as yet. The dollar is the reserve currency. So what's the problem, Christopher? Everything's good. Everyone wants to bring their capital to the U.S.
I think we've buried modern monetary theory, and the Chinese holdings of Treasury debt have been pretty stable for a while.
Yeah, they have been.
About $1 trillion. So
yeah,
I can't.
They're not buying more of it.
They're not buying more of it, and I'm not so sure we want them to have that leverage.
That's true.
And then Social Security runs out in 2034, but Medicare starts running a deficit this year, and it's going to run dry in 2028. So if we don't keep these programs the way they are, they'd go away. They're going away, or at least some part of them is going away. So major reforms have to be made. Biden left his State of the Union speech, went down to Florida, called out Ron DeSantis by name. This is
So
really
Ron is on.
Ron is not announced. He is.
But Ron is clearly on. He's a prospective challenger, which is why Biden went to Florida. Otherwise, why bother?
I think DeSantis is considered the greatest threat by both Biden and Trump. DeSantis has about $100 million in the bank, roughly the same.
How much
that
does
Trump.
Biden have?
I don't know what Biden has, but DeSantis and Trump have roughly about the same in the bank in slightly different ways. But the reason why he's taking aim at DeSantis is DeSantis was a congressman between 2013 and 2018. And he voted back then for the Speaker of the House's budget resolution. And in that budget resolution, he supported something called premium support for Medicare, which would allow seniors to pick an insurance program. And it was meant to create competition. One of the problems Medicare has is you can have it, but because their reimbursement rate is so low, a lot of doctors won't even take you. It's very difficult to find a doctor for a senior. So that, in conjunction with Rick Scott's program last year, where he suggested that the Congress review and reauthorize
Just
a lot
a
of this
second. We have a lot of listeners who are foreigners. So who's Rick Scott?
Rick Scott is a senator, and he proposed...
From where? Which state?
I believe Florida.
I see.
And so he proposed last year's various talking points, one of which was that Congress review even entitlements, even mandatory spending. He said nothing whatsoever about cuts, but I think it was more or less a recognition that these programs are running dry. So Democrats have hung that albatross around Republicans for quite some time. And you're getting into a scare tactic, but the fact of the matter is these programs are going to run dry, and something does have to be done.
So you are saying this is a problem that American democracy faces. It's similar to the problem the Europeans have struggled with. They have really struggled to cut benefits, and partly that's why they have a debt crisis, and they are having to bring in austerity at the last moment when creditors are horrified or their currency tumbles or something like that happens.
Sure.
And you say to avoid that, cuts must happen now. And Biden is saying, no, carry on as usual.
Well, I don't know that I'm saying cuts. What the trustees of Social Security and Medicare say is we have a lot of options at this point, or at least we have many more options right now than we will have if we just face the crisis when the crisis moment appears.
Brilliant. So we will, for our listeners, they must know, we will delve into debt, or we'll dive deep into debt in a future podcast I'll do with Christopher, where we will hear the Republican perspective on debt, and it won't be the Donald Trump perspective. It'll be very much George Bush Sr. perspective. He's very much a George Bush Sr. kind of Republican. It's a pity he hasn't served in the CIA and got shot down over the Pacific, but we'll let that pass. It's a bit soft in comparison. But now we'll move on to the second topic, which I'm very curious about, the balloon, the Chinese balloon. And you spent over a decade on Capitol Hill. You actually were part of the Space Committee, correct?
I worked for the former chairman of the Science, Space, and Technology
Brilliant.
Committee.
So you're the perfect man. And you've written an article on Fair Observer on the Chinese spy balloon. So,
I did, yeah.
So
quick
let's
hit.
crack on.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Well, the U.S. has shot down 4 different objects. The one that everyone's curious about is this enormous dirigible that was permitted to traipse across the U.S. This met with a great deal of fury by Americans. I think the administration was surprised by it. I think even the NORAD folks who watch the radars were surprised to learn that these things are moving across the U.S. They weren't programmed to pick these up.
Oh, lovely. That is a huge security lapse.
Enormous. The Pentagon had a fancy phrase for it. I can't remember what it was, but they've now recalibrated those sensors, and we're picking up all kinds of junk, as one member of Congress put it. And the latter 3 objects, we don't know exactly what they are. We're having a hard time recovering them.
They are unidentified flying objects.
Yeah, I think,
UFOs.
Or unidentified aerial phenomenon. That's the Hill speak for UFOs. So,
dearie me.
Yeah, so there we are. But it's caused considerable consternation in the U.S. And the fact that these things are up there, and the fact that it was allowed to just go across all of America, and I hasten to add, went over some of the most sensitive sites in America.
Basically,
we keep our nukes, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I know you've also been following this story as well.
Yes, of course. I treat all geopolitics and all matters related to the global economy seriously, and they are of deep interest. So I have followed it. My co-author, another co-author that I have, Glenn Carl, retired from the CIA, he's followed it. And this is obviously important and alarming for the US, and even more alarming for others, because the others don't have F-22s to shoot down these balloons.
And indeed, we shot down one of these things for the Canadians.
Exactly. So we don't know what they are doing, let's say, over Southeast Asia or elsewhere. So the balloon was carrying an airliner-sized load. It had sensors. It was clearly not there to look at the weather, which is what ChatGPT tells you. Oh, the Chinese claim they were monitoring the weather. Maybe the North Pole, is it melting or not? They just wanted to check how badly will global warming affect the planet.
Sure.
Bollocks.
Yeah,
Bollocks.
and not only that, there was a second balloon over South America that they claimed, oh, dang,
exactly.
The winds blew foul on this occasion as well.
Exactly.
I mean, pretty thin gruel there.
Yeah, pretty thin soup, pretty weak.
Tea. What other metaphors do we have?
Whatever metaphors. But the point is, this is alarming because it's two things. Because it demonstrates two things. Number one, that this sort of spying, and this goes back to the Soviet days. The Soviets used balloons very well. This sort of spying is now back in fashion. Now, look, everyone spies on each other all the time. And the Israelis always send attractive women all around the world. But the key thing is that there are certain rules, gentlemen's rules. You don't do it too overtly. You don't cause a political issue in another country. You do it with some degree of respect. So that sense of respect seemed to be going from the Chinese. That's number one. And then number two, which is compounding that error, is this level of ultranationalism that has come out of China on this issue. They could have just said, oh, well, we'll let it pass. They are saying it's an overreaction. It's America being hegemonic and yada yada. It's raising of temperatures.
Sure.
So number one, sort of the gentleman's rules of the games are being violated. Number two, it is the raising of geopolitical temperatures. That is a risky business, as we know from pre-World War I. Over to you, sir.
Well, and to go to that exact point of raising temperatures, bear in mind this was virtually on the eve of high-level meetings with Antony Blinken, who is going to go over and try to tamp down some of this frustration, antipathy, whatever. And so I think from the American side, and certainly from the administration side, the sheer gall of it was shocking. Now, there's a lot of discussion about whether or not, Xi and other folks, if the right hand knew what the left hand was doing. Did the political apparatus know what the military was doing? But Americans were also, at the bureaucratic level, shocked at the gall. And so Blinken had to cancel his trip. And they were just surprised that, look, we're trying to bring down tensions. Now we have Chinese balloons floating over us.
And the answer to that is we will not know, because once you unlock the ultra-nationalist, hyper-nationalist genie out of the bottle, you have no idea what a rather aggressive general or what a rather aggressive spy satellite chief may do, because he or she expects Xi to give them a pat on the back, or give him or her a pat on the back for being so bold and ballsy. So the genie is out of the bottle. That is the problem. So even if Xi says, oh, take a deep breath and relax, look up, relax, they will probably think that's for public consumption because the genie is out of the bottle.
There has been a problem with lower level bureaucrats interpreting what she says in the most extreme manner possible.
Exactly.
So we know this is an issue.
We know wolf warrior diplomacy and all that. So all of that good. Let's move on
to destabilizing. We were going to talk about energy markets,
yes,
and I know you follow these
destabilizing factors.
And you were on Indian national TV recently, and we've had some movements in global energy.
Yeah, I do follow it. One important thing to note is that the first major oil supply disruption of 2023 is about to happen. Russia has announced a 500,000 barrels per day voluntary production cut. Now, why has Russia done it? Because of price caps and embargoes. So this means, well, supply is going to go down. Now, there's a corollary to it. And the corollary is supply is going down precisely when the International Energy Agency has forecast that we will see a record global oil demand growth. Why? Because China is coming back from catastrophic zero COVID policy. And of course, the emerging markets are growing, even if they are growing slower in this crisis, but they have demand. People in Africa want to ride motorcycles or want to drive cars. People in India, and you've just come back from India, are seeing a record construction of highways.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Right now.
Yes.
So they are going to ride more two-wheelers, scooters, motorcycles, and four-wheelers, cars and SUVs. And of course, as the country grows economically, there'll be more trucks on those highways.
Yes.
So you add the energy demand from the emerging markets, and particularly India and China, and you get, lower supply, higher demand, prices go up, inflation could be back.
Well, you made a good point earlier when we were talking before the show, how this can have a knock-on effect for the war in Ukraine.
Absolutely.
And may diminish an appetite for assisting the Ukrainians to the extent the world has.
I think there'll be many spillover effects because inflation's already there. I misspoke. Inflation will be back. Inflation's already back. But inflation could be back stronger this year. We thought we had tamped it, at least in the US.
Well, in the US, we know that inflation is declining, but slowly. It's tapered the rate of decline.
Yeah, exactly. But it's still there.
Yes.
At a higher rate than the Federal Reserve Bank target of 2%.
Substantially higher,
yes.
yeah.
It had gone up to 9%.
Yes.
But, yeah, it's probably 8% now or 7%. We don't know exactly.
It was a touch less, but yeah.
But 7 maybe. But the point is, in Europe, it is high. And if this happens, the combination of a production cut and rising demand, we could have inflation searing through Europe, and the appetite to support Ukraine would go down. Because look, the big question is, will the vegan, Ukraine flag waving, Lululemon wearing, skinny latte drinking supporter of Ukraine actually sacrifice something in their personal lives?
A latte? I think not.
Even a latte takes energy. Are they going to use less air conditioning? Are they going to walk to work? Are they going to actually make a real sacrifice? And remember, in World War II, people were willing to sacrifice. World War II was won on the backs of people willing to die for a cause. I mean, you and I are in a house where the father of Hillary Chapman, who is our host, left Princeton and went over to Canada, volunteered for the Royal Air Force, and fought in the war.
Sure.
So that sort of sacrifice wins wars.
Skin in the game, sacrifice. You're willing to pony up and do what's necessary.
It's
the war in Ukraine is
blood and treasure at the end of the
right,
day.
and the war in Ukraine is an abstraction for most Americans, and I think for a lot of the world,
for a lot of Europeans.
They want to support it, but
exactly.
it's a faraway thing removed from their lives.
And even where it is very, very, very close geographically, the question is, will you sacrifice? Because German industry has gone from Mittelstand to Mittelkaput. And this, and we've talked about it. But here's the other deal, is there could be consequences for Xi here. Because China and India are going to get less of a discount now if more demand, less supply.
Well, I think it's about 60% right now is what it was.
Well, I mean, we don't know exactly. They're not transparent about it. Why should they be? But the point is, they'll get less of a discount. And remember, Narendra Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, faces an election year in 2024, and he's getting a hammering in the media, particularly Western media. And there is discontent bubbling under the surface.
Yes, yeah. Well, I think that about does it for us. Appreciate y'all having us, and we look forward to chatting with you real soon.
Exactly. All the best for now, and may your skinny lattes not cost that much.
Thanks, y'all.